Just how tough are those conditions for the drivers to cope with?
Well, very tough because, you know, the circuit started wet, it dried out a little, and then really wet at the end there. And visibility is pretty tough around here. So these big wide tires, they chuck up a huge amount of spray. So, we got a lot of good information, and it looks like it's going to stick around for quali as well.
And to an extent, normal service has resumed because Max is at top of the timesheets again.
Yeah, Max had a good session, so he found a rhythm pretty quickly, and was able to just work away at it. So Checo, he got a little bit out of the rhythm, but I'm not too worried. He'll find it for quali.
So the Inter tyres are always in these conditions the nicer tyre to be on for the drivers.
Yes.
Because you don't have the big blocks wobbling around. But they're all really struggling with front locking.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys are struggling with as well? Is it a temperature-related issue?
I think it's temperature. You could hear all the drivers screaming for front temp, and I think that that's the tricky bit with a crossover. So if it's like this in quali, it's going to be, what is the point you go from the extreme onto the Inter? It looked like when Fernando was the first one out, Sector 1 he was good, but Sector 2 the track just wasn't quite there.
And we're interested to know, sort of in layman's terms, how you approach that crossover, whether it is data-driven and done by the pit wall or it's intuitive by the driver.
I think it's a combination of the two. I mean, it's very easy for us to look at a number and say, yeah, it's getting to the crossover number, but it might be that the first sector's super dry and the second sector's super wet, so it might be okay for Inters on the first sector, but not ready in the second sector. So that's where you're working with the driver. So does he feel it's ready?
The one slight fly in the ointment for Max were the downshift issues. How much of a concern is that?
It's just a setting, so there wasn't the ability to change the setting in the car running around, so it's a sort of a data reset. So it's just a tuning for those conditions because you're being a lot softer with a downshift, obviously, in the wet conditions.
Back in the day, we could do a wet session with a wet setup and then change it all for the race and have a dry setup if the race was dry. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So what do you do if we think the race is going to be dry tomorrow, quali's super wet?
Yeah.
It's obviously a compromise.
It is a compromise. So, you've got to get the grid position. You can overtake here, but the temperature is going to be a lot different apparently tomorrow. So it's trying to find that intermediate ground where the drivers have got confidence in the car, but you've not put too much wing on it that'll kill you in the race tomorrow.
It feels like there's very little to choose from in terms of the chasing pack. Aston Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes are all looking a bit more competitive this weekend. Where do you believe the real threat lies?
I think Ferrari. I think their car here looks competitive. I think Aston look like they're there or thereabouts in that session. Mercedes just look like they struggle to be generating tire temperature, so it does seem to be moving from circuit to circuit.
The difference between, I know you've mentioned it, between Max and Checo, we know it's such a fine line of getting the tires working, getting them in that working range. What do you think you can do to help him? Because we know he's not 2 seconds off of Max in these conditions. It's because he's not got the tyre in the working range. What can you actually do to help him out there that you think will be positive for quali?
I think just give him the data, and I think he'll be looking at that now with his engineer and the build up to quali. He'd never got the tyres in that second part of the session in the right window. At the beginning of the session, he was running fine. So the time I'm not worried about in P3. I think that will just naturally converge. We know Checo is pretty decent in the wet. What Max seems to be exceptional at, a bit like Fernando, is just generating tyre temp really quickly.
The aggressiveness.
The aggressive style, and suddenly the car comes into a window where it just works.
How is Checo's morale? Because I felt he's in bullish mood coming into the weekend. He was like, yeah, Christian says the pressure's off, but I disagree. We need to be delivering 1-2 every race weekend. It's fighting talk, it's good, but what do you need to do to sort of help him manage it into tomorrow? Because it is an important weekend for him to have a strong result.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he had a great start to the season. He's had a couple of rougher races, and I think he just needs to find that mojo again. And I think that this is a track he's gone well at before, and I think that actually, not being, he needs to stop thinking about the championship and just let drive, because we know what he's capable of. We've seen it earlier in the year, and take that pressure off himself. And I think that if he just lets freeze his shoulders up a bit, you'll just see him. It'll just come to him more naturally.
Great stuff. We're going to let you have a nice warm cup of tea before
quali. Or a Red Bull.
Or indeed a Red Bull. There you go.
Well done at Le Mans. It was epic what he was doing.
He said it's his favourite ever race weekend.
No, I kept turning the TV on every time I saw it. Jensen was on the telly. It was very good, very impressive.
Genuinely, even better than 2011 here.
I don't talk about 2011.
Actually, that was probably the best race of my life. 30 seconds that I led that race, and I could see Christian on the pit wall, head in hands. Yeah, that's the best feeling I've ever had.
That race went on for about 5 hours.
It did.
And we led almost every lap of it, apart from the last one. But
yeah, if you need any tips anyway, just let me know in qualifying.
You were epic that day.
He charges a high consultancy fee. I'll just warn you of that, though.
Yeah, it was a long way home after that race, I tell you.
Thank you for your time, Christian. All the best this afternoon. I'll take that for you. Thank you so much. Okay, do join us.